Good evening and welcome to tonight's conversation with the candidates presented by the League of Women Voters Houston Education Fund and Houston Media Source. Tonight we will be talking with the candidates running for Houston City Council, District H. We would like to remind everyone that all of the candidates who are running in this race were invited to participate tonight, and only the candidates who have accepted our invitation will be joining us this evening for our conversation. Tonight, I'm joined with my co-host, Chris Banks, who will introduce our first candidate. So, Chris, take it away.
Thanks, Brandon. Our first candidate is Karla Cisneros. Karla Cisneros is a 35-year resident of Houston and has dedicated her adult life to working to improve public schools and her community. She was appointed to HISD Board of Education in 2000 and was elected to a full 4-year term in 2001 and served as board president in 2004. As board president, Karla led the search effort that resulted in the selection of HISD's first Latino school superintendent. As a classroom teacher at Northline and Harvard Elementary Schools, Karla taught and helped usher children through their lives. In addition to being a classroom teacher, she has worked as a science teacher and as a reading interventionist. She also worked as a Title I parent involvement specialist, where she nurtured parental and community involvement in 25 schools in HISD's North Central District. As a school activist in the Woodland Heights area, she organized numerous community efforts to make improvements at Chavez Elementary School. She has been active in the PTA, the Friends of Chavez, the Woodland Heights Civic Association, the Parents for Public Schools, the Greater Heights Education Project, the Spark Board, and the Board of Multicultural Education through Counseling and the Arts, or MECA. While serving as assistant director of the city's Spark School Park program, Karla worked with parents and community members to develop over 20 school parks throughout the city. Karla and her husband Tim have 3 children, all of whom have attended HISD schools. And welcome, Karla.
Thank you so much.
So I have your first question. So under the charter, Houston City Council members don't have a lot of power. It's a very strong mayor system, and the mayor controls the agenda. Given that limitation, how will you affect change for District H as a city council member?
Well, that's exactly right. The mayor is the one who really calls the shots in Houston. But council members are important too. They are able to shine a light on things, draw attention to things. They are able to convene meetings and pull people together and look for opportunities to get people to collaborate and work together. So it's a very important role, and I intend to make the most of it.
Ms. Cisneros, what do you feel is the biggest issue facing District H, and how will you address it?
The biggest issue facing District H is the disparity that exists in District H as opposed to much of the rest of the city. We are increasingly becoming a city of haves and have-nots, and District H has more than its fair share of have-nots. The funding has not been equal across the city, and but the same issues exist. You know, the poor infrastructure, public safety, and the city budget all affect what happens in District H. It just seems like it happens more so because of the low-income families that just aren't as effective in advocating for themselves.
So this is kind of a related question, actually. According to the Pew Research Center, Houston leads the entire country in terms of economic segregation, where people who have low incomes live in certain parts of town and people with high incomes live in another. To a certain extent, that's pretty evident in District H. You have certain areas of very high development and certain places that are very low income. So how will you make sure that all of District H has equal opportunity?
That is really the challenge, and I'm a good one to do that. When I moved into the Woodland Heights 30 years ago, it was not the neighborhood that it is now. It was a transitional neighborhood, and there was not support for the elementary school down the street. And I worked as a grassroots leader, a community activist, to be part of that change, pulling people together to change a school, to change a neighborhood. So now when I go out and I'm talking to people, they say, and so much of our district is struggling, they say, well, but you're from the River Oaks of District H, and it's like, you don't understand. It was not that way. I was part of the change. I can help be part of the change here too. So that is the challenge, you know, to to lead. That's what District H needs, is good leadership.
And so the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance is going to the November ballot. What is your position on the ordinance, and why do you feel that way?
I completely support the Proposition 1. I will be voting for it. I'm encouraging other people to do the same. It's the right thing to do. It's the right way to treat everybody, all of the citizens that live here, all the residents that live here, and all of the people we want still to come to Houston, either as new residents or visitors. We want their business. We want them to move here. We want them to live and grow and prosper in Houston. And it sends a really bad message if we don't look like the welcoming place that Houston really is. So I am supporting Proposition 1 in this ordinance.
So there's a lot going on with public transportation right now in District H. Just fairly recently, the Main line, the Main Street line was extended up north, and you've got the rerouting of the Metro buses. What are your thoughts on what's happened so far with public transportation in District H, and what's your vision for public transportation?
It is a huge part of what our future needs to address and really tackle. And District H has a lot of really great opportunities with the red line that goes north now in the extension up to the community college, and also the green line that goes into the east end. So District H has a total, I think, of 12 stations, along the rails. That's a lot. But those stations are nice. You get off and it's nice. But then what? They don't connect well to the neighborhoods around them. So we have a lot of work to do to make it really effective, so that we need transit-oriented development. We need walkability to those areas, at least a quarter of a mile, so that it will be effective, and really taking advantage of the investment, this big investment in building this infrastructure, that we will be connecting housing and jobs and places people want to go. Because right now you get off and it's not easy. The sidewalks don't take people far enough into the neighborhoods. We don't have enough housing options and development along there. I mean, so I think there's a lot of opportunity for to use that to spur very, very good development and growth all along those 12 stations in District H. That's just about that part. Did you want me to talk about other transportation?
No, please. Yeah, continue.
Okay. Well, this is a huge issue, and as more and more people move to Houston, and a lot of them they're coming in big numbers. They're saying, in another 20 years we'll have another 1 million people in the loop, another 4 million in the suburban ring. So we're talking way into the future, and it's really time to be thinking about that now and how that's going to happen. So as we're doing a better job, now we've got some light rail. Not enough. We've got this reimagined bus network. That's a really good start too. That's just gotten launched, and there's still some tweaks, I think, that need to be made. But that's a really valiant effort. There will be and all the bike lanes that are and paths that have come to Houston recently. That's a big plus too. But we need to be thinking beyond those things to the future. Eventually, with all the millions of people that are coming to this area, we will need commuter rail. And when that happens, we're not ready for it, because the existing rail system for freight that we have in our city, that business is also growing. And in that same time period, their capacity will be exceeded because their growth is expected to also double. So those are privately owned businesses. We are not going to get rail from them, unless they have something better. So what we need to be thinking of, and I'm not really hearing a lot of talk about this, but eventually we do need a new freight system, freight rail, maybe like a tri-track system around the city that connects to the port, and would allow then to the existing rails to be turned over for commuter rail. So those are long-term and expensive investments. And so we need to get hold of, of our city's finances and get beyond just thinking of how we make it to the next day and patch a pothole, to thinking about how we're going to manage transportation, because it's really got to be multimodal. It won't be one thing anywhere. We have a lot of different people here, and it's not a one size fits all kind of system. So we need everything, and we need to be thinking about it now.
Often when we talk about crime prevention, we hear candidates talk about how there's a need for more cops and that'll equal less crime. When we don't deal with the systemic issues that are linked to crime, such as lack of education, poverty, and other issues. So how would you address crime prevention in terms of dealing with those systemic issues?
That's exactly where we need to really tackle it. The answer isn't to just have more cops. It's not to build more prisons. That's not what we have to do. We need to do a much better job of supporting our children, and we do that at the city level by supporting our neighborhoods. I've been community activist around schools. I've been a school teacher. I've been a school board member, and all of my experience now has brought me to the realization that the role that the city has in playing to support our children and is overlooked. I get pushback from people saying, "Oh, you're talking about education, and supporting children. That's not the city's job." It is so the city's job. It's all of our jobs. But that's how it plays out. When you've supported children and their families, they grow up to be more successful and law-abiding and contributing citizens. And then you don't have the need for taking care of it on the other end, because you've already invested in building people.
So, term limits are going to be on the ballot. How are you voting on the term limits proposal, and what are your thoughts about term limits in the city of Houston?
Well, I see both sides. Why some people like the idea of it's just 2 years at a time, that if you don't like someone, you can get rid of them right away. But I also see the advantage of having people there longer. I had the good fortune to work for Councilmember Eleanor Tinsley when she hired me to be the assistant director of the Spark Park program after the program I had led at my school, Chavez Elementary School, and really came to appreciate the longevity she had at City Hall and what she was able to accomplish. If she had just been doing 3 2-year terms, she would not have gotten things done like the smoking ordinance or the billboard bans, and those things took time. And I think that that some candidates, especially people that are looking to be professional politicians, will tone down what they do because they're thinking, I need to get elected next time so I can stay. And I think when there's a longer term, it lends itself more towards supporting longer term thinking. And we really do need to be thinking into the future. And though I will say that I'm not a long-term candidate. This is it for me. If I get elected this time and 2 more times, that's it. So, but I fall on the side of supporting the longer terms.
So, Ms. Cisneros, what would you say would be the 3 quality of life indicators that you would use as a metric to develop policy and serve your constituents?
I would say they would all center around community and neighborhood. That the quality of life comes from people feeling like they're part of a community, that they're safe, that they're not going to be robbed or burglarized or attacked by packs of dogs, or walking out into the street and there's trash that's been illegally dumped across from them. That the infrastructure is safe and in place. The sidewalks and the streets are good. Those are things I would measure. I would also I also think that looking at the quality of our schools would be a fair assessment too, because even though it really largely falls on the school district and the schools, for what they do, I just so strongly believe that the city's role in supporting the schools is also important and should be an indicator of quality of life.
So, what are your thoughts on the revenue cap? Do you think it should be repealed? Do you think it should stay in place? Do you think it should be amended?
I'm sorry they ever put it in place. I think it was a political decision that was a little lazy, and that they should have fought to do things differently. It hasn't helped the city, and it's just been another constraint to the tools we have to navigate through the difficult financial problems that the city's having now. So I would like to see it gone.
So we're coming to the end of our time with you, so we want to give you the last word. So if you would like to address the constituents in District H on why you should be their next city council member.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to visit with you today. I would like to say that the experience that I bring as a leader, both as a grassroots leader and working at a neighborhood level, and also having served at the top of an organization like the HISD School Board, having already dealt with billion-dollar budgets and dealing with difficult policy issues and personnel decisions, gives me an advantage of this leadership experience that I would bring with me to the City Council, and it would be an asset. So I hope you'll support me in this race. Thank you.
And thank you, Mrs. Cisneros, for joining us. So we're going to reset and take a moment, and we'll be back with our next candidate. So please stay tuned. Welcome back to Conversations with the Candidates, and Chris is going to introduce our next candidate. Chris?
Thank you. Roland Chavez is a native Houstonian raised in the historic First Ward area north of downtown Houston. Early in his career with HFD, Roland became involved in the Houston Professional Firefighters Association, Local 341. His passion for politics led him to work with Local 341 in advocating for firefighter issues and volunteering in many local campaigns and community causes. In 1996, Roland began serving as an elected official with Local 341. It was then his education on the workings of City Hall began, working closely with 4 mayors' administrations on firefighter issues. In 2004, Roland was elected president of Local 341. In 2006, Roland joined former City of Houston Fire Chief Phil Boriski and Mr. George Hittner to create the Firefighters Foundation of Houston. Using donations, the foundation provided for additional funds for needed equipment with Houston firefighters. The foundation has provided over $1.5 million worth of equipment and support since its inception. Roland has worked with a number of community leaders on many issues, including answering the District H Council members Adrian Garcia's request to serve as chairman of the Northside Metro Rail Expansion Committee. Roland attended San Jacinto College and the University of Houston downtown. He entered the Houston Fire Department in 1971 and retired in 2013 after serving 34 years of a rewarding and humbling career. Roland has deep roots and is very passionate for his community. He resides in his childhood home in the Woodlands Heights area, while his mother resides in the First Ward home that has been the family home for 64 years. Welcome, Roland.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be here.
So I have the first question, which is that Houston, under its city charter, has a very strong mayor system, and city council members don't actually have a lot of power per charter. So given that limitation, what would you do as a city council member to best serve the constituents of District H?
I think my background working for the citizens of Houston in the capacity as an employee for one of the public safety sectors and growing up in the labor management issue or environment educated me on how important it is to go to each elected official and ask them, look, there are certain issues that we need within our districts or within our community. Can I count on you to come and help or come listen or come sit in front of a civic club to come and answer some questions? For the most part, whether we like it or not, term limits is here. How often are we having to change over with having to, I hate to use the word educate, but inform newly elected officials about your priorities within these communities? I feel pretty strongly that I'll be able to communicate not only with whoever becomes mayor, but all city council members in order to get them to understand the importance about working within the community. This is where I'm from. This is where I gained my experience working in the community. And I understand the strong mayoral form of government, but I'm not afraid to go and ask the mayor or an elected official, well, let me go back and tell the district exactly what your answers were and watch how often they'll, no, let me get out there, do it. So there are ways to ask them to come and listen to the concerns of the community.
What do you feel is the biggest issue facing District H, and how will you address it?
Personally, the biggest issue that I feel is the infrastructure. Obviously, everyone's going to talk about public safety being number one, infrastructure and quality of life, but if you went into that district, the district is made up roughly of 623 acres of parkland. 71% is Hispanic, 15% African American, 14% is Anglo, 1% Asian, 1% other. With that said, the deterioration within these older sections of town, you have 2nd Ward, Denver Harbor, 1st Ward, 6th Ward, Independence Heights, the only community in town without a library and without their own multipurpose service center. My hope would be to be able to convince developers, let's go back and talk about helping out these communities. Nobody minds development. Nobody minds this new influx of people coming into these areas, but the drainage, the flooding, the lack of sidewalks, the lack of curbs. You have so much as far as a diverse community, but each of these different civic clubs and areas of towns, that district alone, approximately 54 civic clubs in them. And they all have common issues, but they're all different. But my hope would be immediately to ask developers, ask contributors, donors, foundations, let's go work in these communities to try to work on these streets. And to me personally, that's an easy fix.
So this is a somewhat related question, but according to the Pew Research Center, Houston is the worst in the country as far as economic segregation, where poor people live in certain parts of town and wealthier people live in others. And this is pretty evident in District H, actually, which has some very wealthy areas and some very poor areas. What would you do as a city council member to make sure that everyone has equal opportunity in District H?
Yeah, my hope here would be is to ask like I said, I hate to educate, but inform people about the diverse cultures in these certain segments of this District H. Obviously, the 6th Ward is pretty historic. 1st Ward, sadly, you have one side of an avenue that is in a historic district and the other side trying to get to the historic designation. You have the Woodland Heights, which is the only community in the district that already has its own deed restrictions, that has historic designation. But you have an area such as 2nd Ward and in Denver Harbor, where the fear of developers coming in and the gentrification, and all of a sudden this culture and this classic type environment that was settled there many, many years ago, sadly, without any support from any elected official or, for that matter, the developers, we may see it go away. And so my hope would be is I'm campaigning for the little people who don't have a voice. I personally, I know my mom still lives in the same home my dad bought in 1952. And when people question me about potholes in our district, and sadly to say, you can't drive out of your home in the 1st Ward without hitting a pothole. The 1st Ward is one gigantic pothole. But for that matter, these people are, Hispanics usually their culture, if you were raised in this home, there's a good chance you're not going to sell that property. There's just culture of the society that keep your family's businesses or keep your family's homes that you were raised in. And the 2 homes that are in my name, as far as because of my paying the taxes to help my mom out, I would never get rid of my parents' house. My parents struggled so hard. But interesting is that we work to keep up with the development within the community. This will be my hope to encourage others to do the same. Take pride in your community. It's the culture, it's the historic, it's the designation, it's the history of especially the Hispanic communities.
Mr. Chavez, the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance is going to the November ballot as Proposition 1. What is your position on Proposition 1, and why do you feel that way?
I support the Equal Rights Ordinance, Proposition 1. I have humbly and proudly been endorsed by the GLBT, and my background with the firefighters has obviously led me to understand you don't discriminate against anybody. I never once, for 34 years, never once asked somebody when they called for 911, what is your demographics? What is your background? Are you a Republican or a Democrat? Or are you straight? Or are you gay? Or your religion? I never once. I did my job. And here the same way. I'm going to do my job, and my job is I'm going to serve everyone, and not ask anybody. I mean, this is we live in a society today that this is obviously this ordinance. We're behind the curveball when it comes to other cities around the country who have already passed this. And at the same time, those that are the critics that are out there saying the ugliness about bathroom issues, that's not going to happen. Not here in the city. It never happened. It's never done it before. It never will. And people need to understand this: the economic downfall of this, if we're not careful. How many corporations, venues, events, conventions that may want to look at you as an international city, but if you have the stigma that you're anti, they may choose to go other areas of the country. And with that, we're losing opportunities. We're losing jobs. We could be losing, obviously, the income generated funds for whatever jobs we have, police, fire, municipalities. It could bite us in the rear if we're not careful.
So a lot's going on with public transportation in District H. We've had the expansion of the light rail, which has gone into the district. We've had the rerouting of the metro buses citywide. What are your thoughts on what's happened with public transportation, and what's your vision moving forward?
I think the idea for expanding, especially the rail, was, I think, a great idea. But it could have been done better as far as better planning. Absolutely. You think about this. All the different rail lines that you have in all the different segments of Houston currently, and the new ones that are popping up, especially the extension of the North Line Rail, the extension of the Harrisburg Rail, the extension near TSU and U of H. I think all of us would love to experience the rail. Where are you going to park? where are you going to drive to go to be able to park in a parking garage? There's no planning for that. Never was. The idea is, the fear is that before long, we're now going to be having to be paying for parking spaces in front of somebody's home or somebody's neighborhood in order to be able to walk to the motor and be able to catch the rail if we want to go from the north side all the way to Reliant Park, or if we want to go to U of H, or if we want to go to Minute Maid Park. There's no place to park. And the few spots that you do have are taken up by those that are already understanding the rail and know it and religiously use it now. So my hope would be, I love Metro, I love the rail. As a kid growing up, sadly, with the new design of the new bus lines, they took away our bus line out of the first ward, which was the Metro 40, the P-Corps 40 bus that my dad, since the 50s, rode that bus, and now it's gone. But interesting is that with the rail line, I used the rail line. I just don't have any place to go park it, to go find a spot if I want to go to Reliant Park or if I want to go to Minute Maid. So as an elected official, my hope would be to convince Metro officials, let's look at some opportunities, obviously some different ideas as far as what can we do for the parking. If you provided parking spaces, I think they'll come. I think they'll ride.
So when candidates often talk about crime prevention, we hear the formula of more cops equals less crime, when not dealing with the systemic issues that are tied to crime, such as lack of education, lack of poverty, and as well as lack of opportunity. So how would you address crime prevention policies related to those systemic issues?
Obviously, I think education is the key to everything. But I do also believe that from what I understand currently, listening to the experts, you're 1,500 police officers shy in the city. Not to take away from the police, but you're also 750 firefighters shy, also short. With that said, now you're having to ask police officers to do more with less. You're having to ask them to go into the schools and do the early educational programs, starting with the elementary school levels. And then at the same time, you're hoping that you can encourage those that are coming out of high school to go into the two-year college programs to where they can be able to. But you don't have enough of them. You don't have enough police officers to do that. And sadly, is the way the city is set up for retirements, and this goes back to the firefighters also. The way the system was set up for the retirements, each administration had an opportunity to prevent and to prepare in the future how many firefighters, how many police officers were going to retire in a certain years. In other words, prepare for the attrition rate, in which they failed. Well, when you failed at the top, everything just basically goes downhill, meaning lack of education. You have to cut out certain programs. And when you cut out certain programs, obviously, without the early education as far as in the elementary areas and the secondary schools or in the first couple years of college, in the lack of jobs, what happens? People turn to crime. And when you don't have enough police officers on the street, my hope here is I come from that sector, I understand it. My hope would be in the first few months, let me inform everyone how the system has hurt the city based on not being able to prepare for the attrition rate, because I can promise you, and think about it, the less amount of officers you have on the street, the more overtime. The more overtime hurts your budget.
So we're going to have term limits on the ballot. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on the term limits proposal? How are you planning to vote on that? And what are your thoughts about term limits in Houston?
Chris, I'll support 2 4-year terms. And my thought here is I've witnessed often too many times, obviously with my background and working behind the scenes of several campaigns starting in the 80s. And when we went to term limits, I saw that a candidate once elected spends the first year really learning the system, only to following year having to begin campaigning all over again. And by that time, I felt as if that they didn't focus more. They need to focus more on the issues at hand for either their constituents, their district, or for the city. So there's often, I often say this, sometimes we're happy we have term limits, because there's times where There are some candidates or some elected officials you can't wait to replace, and then there's others you hate to see leave because they've done such a great job. And in this situation, I would hope, though, that and the downside to this is that in the first term, if the citizens vote in the proposal for 2 4-year terms, the first term you'll be working hard because then you want to get reelected. But then again, that last term, you can have a 4-year lame duck person. And I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that people that get elected honestly do the work that the citizens have asked them to do and represent them.
Mr. Chavez, what are the 3 primary quality of life indicators you would use as a metric to develop policy to serve your constituents?
Well, we live so close to all the refineries, and I think that we need to work closer with federal regulators and inspectors as far as air quality in our communities. I feel that in my background, coming from the background of the exposures and the carcinogens in the air, we work closely, obviously, with monitors, air quality monitors, especially when it comes around the Manchester area in District I. And whichever way the wind blows, it can affect the entire city. So, I mean, just the air quality alone is that. Green space is another issue. Do we have enough green space? No, I don't believe we do. I think we need more. We need to concentrate a little bit more as far as for those communities. You want people to have a nice quality of life, and you also want them to come in, move back into the city, into these neighborhoods. But what do you offer them? Do you offer hike and bike trails? Do you offer them dog parks? Do you offer them parks? And safety issues, obviously dealing with all this. Obviously that goes back to public safety. And obviously I think another issue is always going to be the crime issue. People being safe and living in their communities. Can they be able to walk and cycle and walk their kids through the neighborhoods and parks and schools? So my hope would be, obviously, I come from an area that people experience nice quality of life issues because of the parks, but mind you, we grew up in that neighborhood, and eventually we had to keep up with that. And with that said, there's other areas that don't enjoy the same amenities that maybe some communities do. My hope would be to be able to convince elected officials and also contributors and foundations to, let's make this playing field equal, and it's not there yet.
Well, we want to give you the final word because we're running out of time with you. So if you would like to address the constituents of District H as to why you should be their next city council member.
Well, thank you. I spent 34 years doing something I enjoyed doing. I was a Houston firefighter for 34 years. My father was born in the First Ward area where my mom still lives. I have spent my entire career following the footsteps of my parents and the hard work they provided for us for schools, churches, a good education, and a nice quality of life. Obviously, my parents worked hard, not very wealthy at all, not wealthy at all, and I just saw the hard work that they put in us, and my hope would be is to fulfill their same energy that they put in us, where I can go back and work for the community. There's so many neighborhoods that are lacking. I have spent the last 2.5 years after my last campaign in 2013 visiting 54 civic clubs in this district. I've been listening to the community's concerns, not as a candidate, but as a person wanting to come and serve you and help you out. I want to be your voice. I know there's certain people who have this apathy when it comes to about why do I want to get involved, or I don't want to support someone when nobody has ever come to my neighborhoods or nobody ever comes and listens to what we have, what issues we have. Well, I can tell you this. I retired as a Houston firefighter, and I'm not doing this for any other reason other than to be your voice. I want to be your voice on City Council. I want to ask those tough questions. Why not our district? Why not our communities? Why is this not happening to clean up and to provide safety for our community? And why can't we be the same as the Gallerias and the River Oaks or the west end of town? And with that, you'll have a voice sitting on council with me. Again, I'm Roland Chavez. I'm a candidate for City Council District H. Originally from the First Ward, live in the Woodland Heights, but I've never left. My heart and my passion is with you and the community. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Chavez, for joining us. We're going to reset, and we'll be back with our next candidate, so please stay tuned. Welcome back to Conversations with the Candidates, and Chris will introduce our final candidate. Chris?
Sure. Jason Cisneros is a native Houstonian, Army veteran, and HPD community service police officer. Jason's life as a public servant began at an early age when he started attending civic club meetings with his parents. Since then, Jason served his nation in the Army, worked his way through college at the University of Houston, worked for Adrian Garcia and Ed Gonzalez at City Hall, and joined the Houston Police Department. He has worked in the past 2 District H administrations where he solved problems for constituents and organized neighborhood projects to improve the quality of life. Jason joined the Army 2 months after 9/11 and served overseas in 2006 with Operation Enduring Freedom 2, managing service members at the Landstuhl Regional Medical Center. As an HPD community service police officer, he's building relationships between the community and police and organizing community meetings with an emphasis on crime prevention. Now he's raising a family in the same neighborhood he grew up in with his wife, San Juanita, and a bilingual elementary school teacher. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I have the first question,
Yes,
and
sir.
that is, so under the city charter, Houston's a very strong mayor system, and city council members don't really have a lot of power under the charter. So what would you do as a city council member to best serve the constituents in District H?
Yeah, well, definitely. You know, it's hard for council members to get things on the agenda items. Councilmember Bradford, I think, tried that in the past, and working together as a team with other council members and working with whoever's going to be mayor. And as a military guy myself, I've worked under a lot of different leaders and leadership types and personalities. So I feel like I can fit with whoever's going to be there. Yeah. So working together is going to be key.
So, Mr. Cisneros, what do you think is the biggest issue facing District H, and how will you address it?
Definitely. And gentrification is happening now, and our neighborhoods are seeing the hit from development. Developers are not all bad. You can't paint them all with the same brush, per se. There's some good developers out there, but gentrification is what's really coming into the district, and a lot of neighborhoods are implementing Chapter 42 protections and historic district designations, and so I've proposed to have a developer integrity unit, someone that's going to go out and inspect, even public works inspectors that are sign off on all these plans with development, because a lot of neighbors in these neighborhoods that have been there many, many years and decades are sometimes feeling the negative impact of development. So I want to make sure that it is an equal playing field for everybody.
So this is kind of a related question, but
Sure.
according to the Pew Research Center, Houston ranks worst in the nation in terms of economic segregation, where poor people live in certain parts of town and the wealthier people live in others. And this is really pretty evident in District H, which has some very wealthy areas and some very poor areas. So what would you do as a city council member? What can the city do to ensure that everyone in District H has equal opportunity?
Thank you. Yes, I live on the other side of 45. I don't live in the nicer part of District H like my opponents do, and so I'm living the District H dream today. I have potholes in my neighborhood. I have illegal dumping in my neighborhood and stray dogs. So making sure that we supply folks with an avenue to become homeowners and to be invested in their community like I have. I've been blessed and fortunate to have that opportunity through Avenue CDC, and I own a home in the area I grew up in, something that a lot of folks can't say. So we need to make sure that we continue to do that, so that way future generations can have that opportunity. I want my girls to have the same opportunity I've had, and I don't want to have to drive out to Kingwood to see my grandkids one day. So we need to make sure that folks take ownership of their neighborhood, and that we allow them economic development opportunities and home ownership so that they can live the dream like I'm living.
So the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance is going to the November ballot as Proposition 1. So what's your position on Proposition 1, and why do you feel that way?
Yeah, I support the proposition. I support the ordinance. I support equality, and I think anything that's going to tackle discrimination, we have to support that. I'm a veteran, I'm a Hispanic male, and I think we need to support that, definitely.
So there's a lot going on with public transportation to District H. We've had the expansion of the rail lines. We've had recently the rerouting of buses. What are your thoughts on what's happened in public transportation to District H? And what's your vision for public transportation moving forward?
Yes, I've been open about not being very happy with Metro at the moment. I think there should be more transparency and more reaching out to communities. They were doing well during the North Corridor. It was under reconstruction and the rail lines with the CAB, Community Advisory Board meetings. I've been vocal about requesting those, at forums about having community stakeholders have a voice for what goes on at Metro and the rerouting of the bus routes, and also with rail, and also with other things in the community. There's a lot of issues that are going on down the rail line, especially in District H, that Metro needs to help out with, and the Metro PD is helping out with some things on Main Street, but I just think that Metro needs to keep that communication flowing with the community, so I'm going to advocate as a council member for more community advisory board meetings with stakeholders at the neighborhoods. Yeah, because we've seen council members and other legislators going before the board to advocate for a certain thing, and the Metro board just ignored the request and didn't really pay attention.
So often when we talk about crime prevention, we hear the formula of more cops equals less crime, and not necessarily a lot of attention on the systemic issues such as lack of education, poverty, and lacks of opportunities. So what crime prevention policies would you advocate for to be put in place to deal with these more systemic issues?
Right. Crime prevention is a team effort. It's with community service police officers like myself. It's with community leaders, going into the schools and making sure kids know about crime prevention techniques and their families is one thing, but also just partnering with other agencies and partnering with community stakeholders to make sure that programs are implemented to prevent crime. Educating folks on what is a crime and what isn't, and our officers too, to make sure that we have community policing techniques and initiatives that are on the field.
So term limits are going to be on the ballot, expanding the 2-year terms, the 3 2-year terms to 2 4-year terms. What are your feelings on that proposal, and what are your feelings on term limits generally?
Yeah, I think we need term limits, first of all. 3 2-year terms is difficult for the office holder. I've worked in the past 2 administrations, and I can tell you that once you have things in the pipeline and things going, it's already re-election time, so you're preoccupied about that. So I support the 2 4-year terms. Definitely term limits, though, because I don't think it's right for someone to just stay there and keep it going for decades and decades. We need new leadership.
So what would you say are the 3 primary quality of life indicators that you would use as a metric to develop policy to best serve your constituents?
Good question. Like I said, gentrification. Gentrification is happening. Basic quality of life issues like illegal dumping, stray dogs, filling potholes, and also drainage. We see rebuild and to fix our streets, but we're not going to be able to do that if we don't tackle the city's budget crisis that we're going to be facing. So as a council member, I'm going to make sure that we get that in order so we can make sure that our district is going to function well.
And in terms of the budget crisis, since you brought it up,
Yes.
How exactly would you feel that the city should best handle that?
Yeah, well, one of the main components is the pension system right now, and it's not something that the city's going to be able to sustain going forward. I'm advocating for local control with the firefighter pension, as well as other candidates in other races and folks that are running. And the thing is that HPD's already made concessions to their pension program. And today, a fire cadet that joins the academy and finishes up a 30-year career plus is going to have almost $1 million in their retirement fund. Whereas an HPD officer, the same thing, joins today, does 30 plus years, is not going to have anything close to that. Why? Because the HPD's already made concessions, already made cuts to their pension program, and Houston municipal employees as well, and they're controlled locally with the city council and mayor, whereas the firefighters are at the state level. So it doesn't make any sense for a state rep or a state senator from Lubbock, Waco, Dallas, whoever, Corpus Christi, to tell us Houston taxpayers how to fund that firefighter pension, and that's just something that we're going to have to tackle to move forward. If not, we're not going to be able to afford to fill potholes. We're not going to be able to afford to hire more officers or build new streets or libraries.
What are your thoughts on the revenue cap? Keep it, repeal it, amend it? What would you do with that?
Yeah, and people think, raising the revenue cap is like raising taxes, but I don't know if we've reached the cap. We have to look at it further. I can't say right now whether I support it or not, but I will be open to looking at it further, definitely.
So, how would you feel that the city should better use technology in order to implement positive changes for the city?
Yes. I've also been open as a candidate about bringing more technology to the community to bridge that gap. Because a lot of folks in the community don't know what's going on, and it's not their fault. But they can't always go to the public session on Tuesday afternoons or the council meeting on Wednesday morning. So I'm going to advocate for bringing more transparency and bringing my town halls on YouTube live, streaming them live. HPD's had great success with this, with Chief McClellan's town hall meetings. They're live on YouTube. Everybody has a phone. Everybody can get that. And if you're at home cooking dinner, you can still watch what's going on or breakfast. And so I've found some difficulties myself with the HTV online, so YouTube is just the easier process.
So we've seen a few difficult times come recently in Houston because of the drop on oil prices. What do you think that we should be doing to diversify our economy even further?
Yeah. Well, definitely make our city welcome for new business. Make sure our city and our workers are ready to go and make sure that economic development is happening. 380 agreements, other incentives that are going to attract companies to Houston is a plus. I support those as long as we're against stimulating the economy. And I think that it's important that Houston stays on the forefront of that with the port and with everything that we have with NASA and all our industries that are growing here in Houston. And so as a council member, I'll support initiatives to bring companies to do business in Houston.
So Houston is seen as one of the most diverse cities in the country. What do you see as the value of that diversity, and how do we capitalize on that diversity?
I think we see it today. I mean, look at the table here. At City Council, we need to see it as well. We need a young leader at Council, a young military veteran, and so I hope to be a voice for those at City Council. Our city is diverse and it's thriving, and I think it's great. I think we need to welcome folks to come into our city and make home the districtation.
Well, speaking of diversity, what can HPD do to improve relationships with communities of color and the LGBT community?
Sure, definitely. Good question. As a community service officer, I do this every day. And I work with homeowner associations. I go to schools, talk about crime prevention. I work with the PACA, the Police and Clergy Alliance committee that HPD has, as well as the PIP, Positive Interaction Program. And so, HPD is doing a lot of great things right now with community policing. We're actually leading the nation in it. We could always do better. But they just started again with the cadet class. Once they graduate, they're taking the cadet class and giving them a tour in neighborhoods in Houston, and getting them down and walking around and have community leaders talk to them and make sure that these cadets that are just recently graduated to be officers the next day in patrol, that it's okay if someone is walking down the street that doesn't look like you and not dressed like you. It's not illegal to do that. So different functions and different exposure for new officers. And so, as a community police officer, I'm very passionate about making sure that community policing is the priority.
So with the addition of bike lanes downtown, how do we continue to make Houston a more pedestrian-friendly city?
Yes, I've spent some time in Europe in the Army, and they're very pedestrian-friendly, and I think that we can bring those concepts here to Houston. There's a lot of potential with hike and bike trails that are going on now. You see critical masses is growing every month, so definitely the need is here, and we need to make it friendly for cyclists and for folks that use mass transit as well. So as a council member, I would definitely support initiatives moving forward, projects, and finding funding opportunities to make sure that these happen. Enforcing the 3-foot rule for cyclists is a big priority too.
So what can the city do to support arts and support cultural institutions, and specifically maybe ones in District H?
Sure, yeah. We have a lot of our designated areas in District 8 in the First Ward and even in the East End, and so it's growing. I'm glad to see more public art, more murals in the neighborhood. My wife's a teacher at Davis High School, and they're doing a lot of things in the arts there, whether it's mariachi or whether it's art class, and there are a lot of local artists in District 8 that are having their artwork showcased around the country. And so I think we need to highlight that more and bring out more cultural awareness too. And so I'm glad to see things like the Esplanade in Second Ward and more farmers markets, which brings out the arts too in the community. And so I'm definitely supporting that.
So we've talked about income inequality this evening, but specifically let's turn to the minimum wage. What is your position on raising the minimum wage for public and private employees?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. As a council member, I can only raise or support the minimum wage increase for city employees. And so advocating for it at a different level would be one thing, but to make it happen at the city level, definitely want to look into that. Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of District 8, how would you go about in terms of dealing with the different civic clubs and the different groups in terms of getting them on a similar accord and addressing specific issues?
Yeah, good question. You know, my passion for public service started over 20 years ago when my family started the North Central Civic Association in Northside, and there's when I got the exposure of being involved in the community, getting involved with my mom, who was a treasurer on the board. My grandma was a secretary. My uncle founded it. So I know the importance of civic clubs, and I know that that a lot of folks need to have their voices heard. And so I, as council member, will make sure that we have prioritized a list of needs going into neighborhoods and making sure our super neighborhood councils are also thriving. And for a while, they weren't even organized. So I'm glad to see super neighborhoods back in order, especially in District 8 right now. You know, but the reality is about, you know, I'm just guessing about 90% or so of folks don't go to civic club meetings. You can go and see, and you'll see the same folks there every month. And I think that we need to branch out and reach out to everybody in the neighborhood to make sure that they're involved. Maybe they don't know about the club. So my thing as council member would probably go to my super neighborhoods first, and then go to civic clubs and make sure that we're all on the same page with making sure that we enhance the quality of life for District 8 as a team.
So we've come to our end of our time together, but we want to give you the final word. So if you would like to address the constituents of District 8 as to why you should be their next city council member.
Thank you. Again, my passion for public service started over 20 years ago when my family started the local civic association. My mom brought me through the civic club and showed me the ranks and brought me through and showed me how to work hard in the community. At 17 years old, I lost my mom to breast cancer. I was a senior in high school at Reagan High School. I wanted to pursue her dream to serve the community further, and I joined the Army after 9/11, 2 months after 9/11, because I wanted to make her proud and my family proud and serve the city, and serve the country. So moving forward, I just want to make sure I do the best I can for the district and use my experience at City Hall, working for Adrian Garcia and Councilmember Ed Gonzalez, who were both supporting me, the current council member, the previous council member, and my family. I mean, I have raising 2 girls, my wife and I, in the near north side, and so I know the importance of wanting safe parks and safe streets and to make sure that we can walk down the street without fear. So as your council member, I will work hard to implement those and more. So thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Cisneros, for joining us this evening. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters Houston Education Fund and Houston Media Source, we'd like to thank you for joining us tonight for this conversation with the candidates. We would like to remind you that this recording and other conversations will be available through the League of Women Voters Houston Vimeo channel and the Houston Media Source YouTube channel. So on behalf of Chris Banks, my co-host, I'm Brandon Mack. Thank you for watching, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.